Bloodscowl is one of the most incredible swords in the whole game. In addition to the fact that we find it on the remains of the great-grandfather of the local miner Cretius Caerelius, his diary also says that when this blade is waved, a stream of the strongest energy emanates from him. By itself, the average sword base damage is 16, but at the same time, its power attack is accompanied by a red energy, which hits depending on the direction and type of power strike, causing an additional 30 points of damage with a single blow. And all this combined with basic characteristics without upgrading at the grindstone makes Bloodscowl one of the mightiest swords in the entire game. And besides, he can hit targets that are beyond the reach of a bash with an ordinary sword, and his ability doesn't need to be recharged. The energy released during power attacks never expends the power of the charge. And in general, its uncommon coloring, an exciting story, and a beauteous effect allows the blade to get into the top 5 of the best unusual weapons in Skyrim. The next weapon is not only uncommon in its essence, but is also located in one of the most uncommon places for weapons in the entire game, located on board the ship called Kataria, on which the Emperor Titus Mede II arrived in Skyrim. And most players never find it because firstly, you need to go through the storyline of the Dark Brotherhood, and secondly, you need to get to the very end of the bowsprit of the ship, which also requires a certain amount of skill. But this weapon is obviously worth it because the power of the blade is revealed both in direct bashes, in which an enemy loses his balance, and when using the sword to block an enemy attacks, similar to the effect when bashing with a shield, where a bash with this sword stuns the opponent, causing him to stagger. In addition, the overwhelmed enemy doesn't immediately come to his senses, remaining virtually paralyzed for a while we can continue to beat him without resistance. And it's exactly because of this property this sword can easily defeat most opponents. And it's thanks to such a unique and handy effect this sword gets into the top 5 of the most uncommon weapons in the game, taking an honorable 4th place here. Dwarven Black Bow of Fate, by contrast, is unique not so much for its enchantment as for the material from which it is made. Not from ebony, its analog, but most likely from a rare dwarven metal, which plays with many different colors, being the only weapon in the entire game having such a goodly structure. In addition, it has a brighter damage compared to a common dwarven bow, as well as a 50% chance to absorb 25 points of health, stamina, and magicka, which is taken away from enemies or transferred to us. As a result of which, we constantly replenish all 3 parameters of attributes right during the battle. And its goodly visual effects, the glow of the handle, and the absorbing of all attributes, red, blue, and green, make it one of the most beautiful and attractive weapons in the whole game. Chilrond is a legendary artifact that is also uncommon not only for its history. Outwardly, it's very similar to the standard glass sword, but its blue shade gives it an unusual appearance. The glass from which it was created is not green, but pale blue, like early brittle ice, and at the same time, the enemy struck by this sword will receive not only usual damage, but also frost damage, as well as the effect of paralysis. But the main thing is that the effect of frost damage depends on Perk's Frost Enchanter, as a result of which the damage of weapons can be noticeably enhanced. But besides that, it also has another feature. So you can only find him in Mercer Frey's secret room, located in the basement of his personal mansion, where we find ourselves in the process of a quest to pursue the Thieves Guild storyline. At the same time, the damage of the weapon will be determined during our first visit to the house, which means if you wait until you enter the house on level 46, then in this case the sword will have the highest base damage. And this is the highest damage among all existing one-handed swords in Skyrim, second only to Mirak's sword, but together with all its effects surpassing even this sword. Ebony Blade is perhaps one of the most frightening Daedric artifacts created by Daedric Princess Mephala herself, whose field is the art of killing, as a result of which her blade is the ultimate incarnation of a tool for killing, also called a vampire because of its insidious charms. And although he looks like Akaviri Katana from the last part of Tess Oblivion, but still the power of Ebony Blade is much stronger. Whenever the Ebony Blade hits an opponent, part of the inflicted damage is transferred to the owner in the form of life force, where, depending on the fulfillment of the conditions for charging it, which is the killing of friendly characters, we will receive from 10 to 30 points of additional damage from each bash with the blade, which also return to us as life forces, which, with the maximum upgrading of weapons, makes it a truly perfect weapon for killing, where we'll revive our vitality with great rapidity, in fact becoming an immortal warrior. And besides, this blade will never require recharging, which is why it won't fail its owner even in the most difficult fights, thereby taking the first place of honor of the strongest uncommon sword in the game.